Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to the first episode of Sudan In Focus, weekly news magazine, which focuses on Sudan news and events, aiming to give Sudan TV audience a broad and first-hand information about what is going on.
Zainab Haj Bilal, Sudanese writer. She was born March 7, 1947 in the city of Sinja in the state of Sennar and is a member of the Sudanese Writer Union and a member of the Association of Writers. The writer Zainab, icon of Sudanese criticism, one of the most important Sudanese women who is named shown in the world of literature and culture and considered a flag of the city of Sinja. Her talent began in the mid-stage as they began to frequent the school library, and she said her beginning sweaters began with the subject of expression in the creation class, where teacher praised her and told her that would succeed. زميلك الدار محمد. She used the lesson daily to her grandmother brothers and that called the benefit sources of those audience because in the future she became novel writer. And she said that the grandmother always began with the marriage. Your agreement is not your father good, Jana, and come to you. One of the most important novels at night is the novel The Choice, which she published in 1984. The King of the Caddis Plant, issued in 2011, and the offering Chorus of A Crossing from Their Heart, and Device was issued in 2016. The writer Zainab Bilal received several awards, and the most important of which is the State Award for Dramatic Text for the Trial in 1975. She also benefited from the Academic Chief's Study Drama when she shared the contemplation of State Khartoum and the people of National Radio. She held many literary and honorary positions, including the President's, the Sudan narration, and the criticism forms of the position of President of Sudan, Women or Organization for Climate Profits, a member of Association Women Writers, the Secretary of Narration of Sudan Writer Unions, member of the Idle Malls, and a member of the Azibir Organization for Creative and Scientific Excellence. She is policious in crime and the straight stud and also attended in Rice Profession in Humanities, then work as English teacher for the middle stage. Besides, Zainab Bilal did not neglect the other side of the literary and the intellectual taken that God gave her, which made her go to work in the media field. Seminars on the book Women and the Darkness of History, Sharika Hall, presentation of collection of story by the writer Stella Gaite, presentation of the collection of Fatima Atabani, jury committees, member of jury and the champion of facts competition in the youth women and in the women creative women's union military creative and in the Saleh Al-Tayyib Youth Award at the Abdul Karim Center and in the short story competition on Khartoum Radio sponsored by the Ministry of Culture with an estimated monthly prize.
The Kushite pyramids in Sudan are characterized by the presence of the funerary chamber and the method of building. We also find that the pyramid of Nuri, to which burial was transferred and which were not far from the Kuru area, and the most prominent pyramid discovered there are Taharga and Aspelta. There is a group of pyramids such as Barkal and Norsan, which include a gilded pyramid for Queen Amni Shikhto. The Kushite pyramids were advanced in terms of construction, then to a pyramid in symmetry. After that, Bural moved to Jabal Barkal, then to the southern Pajarawiya, then to the north Pajarawiya in Marawi. And the map of the Kushite Meroitic civilization sites include Marawi, Karnub, Mayu Mountain, Second Waterfall, Karma, Parka, Nuri, and researchers have confirmed that there are significant differences in archaeological sites, but modern excavation and evidence have proven that Nafta was the religious center, while the political center and weight of this civilization was for Marawi during the 2nd to 4th century AD. Kush is derived from the Meroitic civilization, and there is also the Karma kingdom, which is the first Kushite civilization that preceded the Meroitic civilization period, and is considered one of the greatest civilizations in the African continent because it was based on mud construction, which was rare at that time. And this civilization flourished remarkably in the waterfall area, and the most prominent monuments that were discovered in that area were represented by the fortified fortresses, houses, and tombs, because it was considered a moment of cultural and commercial trade between Marawi and other countries that cooperated with it in terms of trade, as for the shape of the graves and the method of burial in the kingdom of Karma. It was done in a longitudinal manner by placing the dead person in the squatting position, in addition to the offerings that were placed with him in the grave according to what the excavation showed during the burial, as their servants were buried with them while they were alive, in addition to placing pottery, food, drinks, and cow heads.
Sudan has many tourism potentialities. The Kingdom of Karma, it's one of important tourist site in Sudan. The Kingdom of Karma, or the Karma culture, was an early civilization centered in Karma, Sudan. It flourished from around 2500 BC to 1500 BC in ancient Nubia. The Karma culture was based in the southern part of Nubia, or Upper Nubia, in parts of present-day northern and central Sudan, and later extended its reach northward into Lower Nubia and the border of Egypt. The polity seems to have been one of a number of Nile Valley states during the Middle Kingdom of Egypt. In the Kingdom of Karma's latest phase, lasting from about 1700 to 1500 BC, it absorbed the Sudanese Kingdom of Sai and became a sizable populous empire, rivaling Egypt. The primary site of Karma that forms to the heart of the Kingdom of Karma includes both an extensive town and cemetery consisting of large tumuli. The level of affluence at the site demonstrated the power of the Kingdom of Karma, especially during the second intermediate period when the Karmas threatened by the southern borders of Egypt. Until recently, the Karma civilization was known only from the town site and cemeteries of its metropolitan center and smaller sites in Karma, Sudan. However, recent survey and excavation work has identified many new sites south of Karma, many located on channels of the Nile, now it's dry, which lay to the east of modern course of the river. The pattern of settlement indicates a substantial population and for the first time provides a political context for metropolitan Karma. There also seems to have been districts where pastoralism, goat, sheep, and cattle, and gold processing were important industries. Certain Karma towns served to centralize agricultural products and direct trade. Analysis of skulls of thousands of cattle entered in royal Karma tombs suggests that stock were sometimes brought vast distance from far districts. Evidence for settled agriculture in the region dates from the pre-Karma period 3500 to 2500 BC, while copper metallurgy is attested at Karma from 2200 to 2000 BC. Only the centers of Karma and Sai Island seem to have contained sizable urban population. Possibly, further excavation will reveal other regional centers. Possibly further excavation will reveal other regional centers. At Karma and Sai, there is much evidence of wealthy islets and a class of dignitaries who monitored trade arriving from far off lands and who supervised shipments dispatched from administrative buildings. Evidently, Karma play an important role in the trade of luxury items from the Central Africa interior to Egypt. The Karma culture was rooted in the pre-Karma culture, which flourished around 3500 BC. Egyptian Old Kingdom epigraphic evidence as well as evidence from Anipa indicate contacts with early Nubia at that time, 2700 to 2200 BC, as well as the presence of early Nubia regional rulers. The extent of culture political continuity between the kingdom of Karma and chronologically succeeding kingdom of Kush is difficult to determine. The later polity began to emerge around 1000 BC, around 500 years after the end of kingdom of Karma. Initially, the Kushite kings continued to use Karma for royal burials and special ceremonies suggesting some connection. Moreover, the layout of royal funerary compounds in both Karma and Napta, the Kush capital, are similarly designed. Caches of status of Kush pharaohs have also been discovered at Karma, suggesting that the Napatan rulers recognized a historic link between their capital and Karma. Karma, it is very important civilization in Sudan. And Sudan is a great tourist destination. So let's visit Sudan. Hello and welcome to Economic News. Minister of Finance, Dr. Jibril Ibrahim, has set guidelines for the ministry's work in the current stage, with the most important being to intensify efforts to continue bearing the responsibility of running state's affairs and financing the war effort of the Battle of Dignity, as well as finding production to ensure its continuation and rebuilding states affected by the war. During an expanded meeting with the Undersecretary and Directors General of the Ministry, the Minister stressed the importance of the Ministry of Finance leading the application of digital transformation and keeping pace with developments in this field. He also emphasized the need to indigenize global technical system and financial laws and regional and international banks and adapt them to the requirements of the national economy to gain the necessary flexibility to deal with external financing institutions for the benefits of reconstruction and sustainable development. Minister of Industry and Trade, Mahasin Ali Yaqub, has affirmed the Ministry's full commitment to implementing the ministerial decision regulating foreign trade controls. She underlined the importance of the implementing imports controls, which will contribute to controlling and regulating the entry of goods, services, and production inputs into the Sudanese market. In press statement, the minister explained that the controls aim to achieve consumers' satisfaction and meet domestic demand while taking into account the general guidelines of important policy, top of which protecting and encouraging international product, preserving public health and the environment, and ensuring that imported goods meet quality requirements. Mahasin emphasized that the ministry was working to facilitate foreign trade producer through electronic transformation and coordination with the related bodies by completing transactions via the Baladna platform. She called on importers to fully adhere to these controls to avoid procedural delays. Minister of Justice Dr. Abdullah Darf has met with the Chinese Charge of Affairs to Sudan, Chang Xiang, and his accompanying delegation. The meeting was attended by the Undersecretary of the Ministry of Justice, the Attorney General of the Republic of Sudan, and the head of international agreements at the ministry. The minister stated that the meeting, which was fruitful, touched on the agreements establishing the international mediation organization which Sudan has signed. He explained that this agreement has been studied by the International Agreements Directorates at the Ministry of Justice and that they will strive to ratify it as soon as possible. He noted that Sudan was one of the first countries of the organization. Dr. Darf explained that China was a strategic partner of Sudan in various aspects and a supporter of the country in international forums. The Minister of Justice explained that the agreement was part of a wider exchange of interest and will provide Sudan with the opportunity to become a member of this organization, through which issues and disputes related to trade and investment will be resolved. For his part, the Chinese Charge of Affairs explained that the meeting urged accelerating the ratification of agreement establishing the International Mediation Organization, expressing his hope that ratification will be completed as soon as possible to contribute to the organization's launch in the near future. Sudan's competing authorities are beholden to Malaysia leaders, say analysts. In June, the Sudanese Armed Forces appointed Prime Minister Kamel Idris to lead the civilian cabinet in Port Sudan, the wartime capital on the Red Sea coast. Idris wanted to appoint a team of technocrats to run the new government. But Jibril Ibrahim and Minni Arkomenawi, leaders of two powerful armed groups from Darfur, refused to leave their posts. An armed leader, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan overruled Idris to keep them there. Burhan's concession to Ibrahim and Minnawi allowed them to keep ministries that control government revenue, said Suleiman Baldo, the founder of the Sudan Transparency and Policy Tracker, a think tank. Al Jazeera sent written questions to army spokesperson Nabil Abdullah asking him why al-Burhan overruled Idris. No response had been received by the time of publication. The other side of the war is a coalition of armed groups that have divided Sudan in half after more than 2 years of civil war. The Rapid Support Forces, paramilitary, which is battling the army, has formed an alliance with a smaller armed faction and declared its intention to form parallel government that will ostensibly represent all of Sudan. The RSF-backed coalition has already unveiled its leadership council, on which the leaders of armed groups feature in prominent positions. Analysts told Al Jazeera that SAF and the RSF are trying to meet the demands of powerful militias in a bid to keep their respective battlefield alliance intact. Oil-rich Sudanese region becomes new focus of war between army and rival forces. Sudan's oil-rich Kordofan region has become a major front line in the ongoing conflict between the army and rival paramilitary forces. The region is crucial for South Sudan as its oil flows through pipelines in Kordofan before being exported. The battle for the region, which consists of 3 states with a population of close to 8 million, has intensified since June. The army has focused on regaining territory from the Rapid Support Forces, RSF, after making significant gains in the preceding 3 months, including recapturing the capital Khartoum and neighboring Jazeera state. The conflict has claimed the lives of about 150,000 people and forced 12 million others from their homes, roughly equivalent of the population of Tunisia or Belgium. The RSF seized Khartoum in April 2023 following a fallout between General al-Burhan and his then ally, the paramilitary group's commander, General Muhammad Hamdan Dagalo. Sudan's civil war, a crisis by the numbers. More than 2 years into Sudan's civil war, aid groups warn it has become one of the worst displacement and hunger crises on the planet since fighting erupted in April 2023 between the Sudanese military and the Rapid Support.
More than 2 years into Sudan's civil war, aid groups warn it has become one of the worst displacement and hunger crises on the planet. Since fighting erupted in April of 2023 between the Sudanese military and the Rapid Support Forces, over 10 million people have been forced from their homes. At least 25 million now depend on humanitarian aid to survive. The war began in Khartoum and quickly spread, especially through the Darfur and Kordofan regions. Both sides have been accused of war crimes, including ethnic cleansing, sexual violence, and the targeting of civilians. Sudan's once functioning health system is now collapsing. The country faces outbreak of cholera, measles, and malaria, and UNICEF warns that 3.7 million children under 5 are at risk of severe malnutrition. Infrastructure has crumbled. Dozens of water and power stations are destroyed. Farms lie abandoned. Over 10 cultural sites, including the National Museum, have been damaged or looted. Hospitals struggle to track casualties, but rights groups estimate tens of thousands have been killed or wounded. Despite several rounds of peace talks, the violence shows no signs of ending.
United Nations, a bold by violence against civilians in Sudan's Kordofan region. The Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, is concerned about the ongoing violence against civilians in Sudan's Kordofan region. In West Kordofan state, an attack on the Brima Rashid area killed 30 people and injured over 40 others. OCHA emphasizes the growing risks facing civilians in the Kordofan region and urgent need for cessation of hostilities, protection of civilians, and safe access to humanitarian assistance and services. OCHA is also warning about the impact of growing gaps in humanitarian assistance in the Darfur region. In North Kordofan state, needs are mounting in the locality of Tawila, where over half of water needs are currently being met. Many emergency latrines are collapsing and hygiene support is criminal, particularly in remote areas. A cholera outbreak in Tawila compounding the already dire situation. The United Nations and its partners have launched an operational response plan focusing on Tawila, requesting $120 million to urgently scale up life-saving support in the area. RSF destroyed 1 million water lab in Khartoum, official says. Sudan's Rapid Support Forces, RSF, have destroyed the main water analysis laboratory for Khartoum state, worth around $1 million. The Al Mukran laboratory, the largest in the state, analyzes water from the Nile River and wells for both public and private clients. The authorities has lost approximately 454 vehicles, including cars, mobile tankers, cranes, and excavators. The International Committee of the Red Cross, ICRC, has delivered new spare parts valued at $77,000, with another $223,000 expected to arrive. All of the state's water stations ceased operations during the war, except for one Al-Manara. 6 of the 12 main stations have partially or fully returned to service, with service at the Beit Al-Mal, Al-Tanqiya, Al-Shajara, and Al-Draif plants restored. The damage was particularly severe at the Khartoum North Bahri station, which has a capacity of 300,000 cubic meters per day. New spare parts are being sourced to bring the crucial station back to full service. Sudan, more than 100.3 million people fleeing war have returned home. Over 1.3 million Sudanese have returned home due to the ongoing conflict, with over 7 million displaced due to the ongoing conflict. The United Nations has called for support as fighting between the regular army and the paramilitary rapid support forces has left tens of thousands dead and millions displaced. The UN has called for an urgent increase in financial assistance to support the displaced people who are returning home with almost nothing. The majority of the 320,000 people have returned since January, but the United Nations expects around 2.1 million people to return to Khartoum by the end of the year. The United Nations has called for an urgent increase in financial assistance to help those affected by the ongoing conflict. Urgent support needed as over 1.3 million war-displaced Sudanese begin to return home. Sudan faces ongoing conflict with over 1 million internally displaced Sudanese returning home and 320,000 people crossing back into the country since last year. The impact of over 2 years of war is immense, with thousands of internally displaced Sudanese refugees and asylum seekers in Khartoum, Sinnar, and Al Jazeera state returning to their homeland. Regional directors from UNHCR and IOM recently visited Khartoum, witnessing widespread devastation and chronic lack of services for its remaining inhabitants, with humanitarian operations massively underfunded both inside Sudan and across neighboring countries, hosting those who fled. An urgent increase in financial support is needed. Recovery efforts must begin in areas that are becoming accessible and relatively safer, while funds are desperately needed to improve conditions for refugees in host countries. Public infrastructure has been destroyed. Schools and hospitals have been ruined or turned into collective shelters hosting displaced families, and lost or destroyed civil documents mean people cannot access existing services. Sexual violence and child rights violations are widespread. UN agencies, in coordination with local authorities and partners, are working to meet essential needs and establish a stable environment that can support, enhance resilience, and strengthen access to services for returnees, displaced people, and host communities who remain. Efforts are underway to provide clean water, boost capacities of health facilities, ensure families have access to necessities such as bedding and hygiene supplies, transport, and cash for food, medicines, and clothes for vulnerable people arriving in border areas, and establish safe space for women to provide mental health and legal aid services. 1.3 million Sudanese return home, offering fragile hope for recovery. Over 300,000 refugees have returned home, according to UN agencies. The International Organization of Migration, IOM, states that these returnees are driven by hope, resilience, and enduring connection to their country. However, many of these people are returning to devastated states and cities. Their resources have been devastated by over 2 years of war. Since the conflict broke out in April 2023, over 12 million Sudanese have been forcibly displaced, representing the largest displacement crisis in the world. 1/3 of these displaced people have fled into neighboring countries such as Chad and South Sudan, which are struggling to support the influx of the refugees. The IOM emphasizes that these returns must be voluntary and dignified.